The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.
Hello everybody, and thank you for tuning in to our second preview ahead of our anniversary game. Of course, it's 125 years of AFC Bournemouth, and we are commemorating this match by wearing some special shirts. So, before we get into our second preview, here's a little bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. To find out what they can do for you, visit dentalonthebanks.co.uk. Now, I've spoken to, of course, John Sinclair in our first preview, but we have got two other leading podcasts with us as well, and they've left their thoughts with regards to the season for Newcastle United and, of course, this game. Now, the first person on is from the True Faith podcast, one of the leading Newcastle podcasts out there, and we spoke to Jon Lane, and here is Jon's thoughts ahead of the first game of the season against Southampton, and, of course, his hopes for the season.
Hi, it's Jon Lane from the True Faith podcast, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how I think Newcastle United are going to do coming at 24-25. If we reflect on 23-24, it was first season back in the Champions League in over 20 years, and we were 20 minutes away from getting through to the knockout stages of that competition. A week later, we were a Kieran Trippier mistake away from getting to the semi-final of the League Cup to face Middlesbrough, who you would have hoped over two legs we beat, so potentially could have been back-to-back cup finals for us. And then we drew Man City in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, and it was a very one-sided contest. Going into this year, we've got no European football, and I think that the biggest thing that killed us last year was injuries. So if we can keep our players fit and we can play that intense football that Eddie Howe likes to promote for Newcastle, then there's absolutely no reason why we can't be in a position where we're battling for the Champions League spot again. I think Lloyd Kelly's a really shrewd signing. I think he really does improve our options at the back. Replacing Paul Dummett with Lloyd Kelly, that's a huge upgrade. And that gives us a real alternative both at left back and at left centre half. And he's got a point to prove as well. Because if he plays well enough, there's not a plethora of left backs at England level at the moment. So the real opportunity for him maybe to cement a place there. But he's definitely a very, very good squad upgrade for us. We haven't really upgraded our first team massively, and I think we have to be really honest about that. We are working hard to bring in Mark Gahey, who would be a phenomenal signing, would really kind of bring on that back four. And, if you look at that potential back four, the future of, Hall, Botman, Gahey, and then Livramento on the right-hand side, that could be our back four for the next 5 to 10 years. That's how, big a signing that would be for us. And then, looking kind of further up the field, we have to be honest about kind of where our weaknesses are. And Left wing really strong. You've got Anthony Gordon and Barnes down the left. Through the middle, you've got Isak and you've got Callum Wilson. And on the right-hand side, you've got Almiron and Murphy, who just aren't that same level. So, ideally, we do need to upgrade at that right wing position. We probably need to move someone like Almiron on. I think Murphy, I think although not as naturally talented as Almiron, I think he brings just as much to the squad. But I also think he's probably happier to play that second fiddle role. Maybe Almiron isn't. So I think if we can make those upgrades, I certainly think that Champions League qualification should be a target for Newcastle. But I think as a minimum we finish in Europe. I think if we don't do that, then there will be questions asked of kind of Eddie Howe and what he can do. But the club need to back him. They need to make sure they bring in the signings to help strengthen. And I really hope he gets that backing, because I really believe he can be our manager for years to come. We qualify for the Champions League. I think there's no doubt, he's done a fantastic job. Thank you very much and goodbye.
And thank you to Jon for recording his thoughts ahead of the first game of the season. Of course, their first game of the season was a 1-0 win against Southampton, where Fabian Schär got sent off. And of course, they played the game with 10 men, but didn't matter. They won the game. Of course, Sir Eddie Howe succeeded. Of course, we do have another special guest as well. And this special guest is from NUFC Blog. And of course, it is a pleasure to welcome back on again, Olly. And here is Olly's thoughts.
Hi guys, it's Olly here from NUFC Blog, and thanks for having me on again. So just some thoughts on summer signings so far, and our thoughts going into the season after last week's 1-0 win over Southampton. So from a signings perspective, it's been a bit of an underwhelming summer so far. Obviously, the one that's probably of most interest to Bournemouth fans would be the Lloyd Kelly deal, who I know there's probably a frustration at his injuries over the last few years at Bournemouth and the fact he ended up running down his contract and leaving on a free. But he's a signing for me who I think is a good deal from Newcastle as a free transfer. I think he's a captain, he's a good age, he can play at left back, he can play as a left-sided centre-back. So I think we've brought in someone there who can really add to the squad. And this is a bit of a theme this summer, as solid as he is when fit, and he's obviously a shrewd addition for a squad point of view, he doesn't massively improve our first team, because at the minute, our first choice left-back's Lewis Hall, who's come in on a permanent deal from Chelsea. That was like a loan with an obligation to buy last summer, so he was always going to sign. But at the minute, Lewis Hall's our first choice left back, and there's high hopes for him. And then when fit, Sven Botman is our first choice left-sided centre-back. So I think Kelly will be a really good option to play in the first team when either our first choice options aren't in form or they're injured, but he doesn't immediately improve our first team, if that makes sense. So, and like I said, that's been a bit of a theme. So we've brought in a couple of goalkeepers who are sort of backup to Nick Pope. Odysseus Vlachodimos from Nottingham Forest, who, to be honest, arrived in more of a sort of PSR deal, if you want to call it that. He was involved in a part exchange with Elliot Anderson going the other way, which seemed to help Forest's sort of financial situation, and likewise they helped us by paying money for Anderson. So that was a slightly odd deal. But Vlachodimos will be a sort of backup goalkeeper, and John Ruddy's another one who came in on a free from Birmingham, who'll, a little bit like John Carson at Man City, he'll probably be just someone that is more ticking a box in there behind the scenes, who's a good pro to have rather than someone that will play. So there's Vlachodimos, there's Ruddy, there's Lloyd Kelly, there's Lewis Hall, who's obviously now come on a permanent after his obligation to buy Isaac being activated. And then the only other signing so far is Willa Sula from Sheffield United, who's a Danish under-21 striker, who is more one for the future, I think, and like a sort of project signing who will sort of be behind Alexander Isak and Callum Wilson as our third choice striker. He looks a talent, but he's probably more one for the future and unlikely to be someone who would play that often. So you can imagine from all of that, we haven't really brought in any marquee signing or any player that really immediately improves the first team and gives us that real injection of quality that we're looking for in a couple of areas. And I think going into the last week of the window, Newcastle are either hoping to get a right winger who can come in and be an upgrade on Jacob Murphy or Miguel Almiron. But the main one at the minute, which is all sort of in the news, is Mark Gahey, who we've been making bids to sign over the past couple of weeks and haven't quite got yet. But it sounds like that one's getting close. But if it does happen, I would imagine he won't be signed in time to play on Sunday. I'm pretty certain of that. But that's still a bit of a way off yet, being in the scenario where we're debating whether he plays this weekend. So think we're getting closer to Gahey, but like I said, the theme this summer has been a bit of frustration that we haven't really made a major signing. So yeah, going into the game against Southampton, I think one thing to take from that, I mean, I think from a Bournemouth perspective, people might look at it and think, well, to win with 10 men, it was 0-0 at the point Fabian Schär got sent off just before the half-hour mark, and then we've managed to score with that kind of one and only chance, to be honest, and then put men behind the ball, and then despite all of Southampton's possession, we've defended really well, we've been really organised, and we've kept them out. So I think from a defensive sort of resilience point of view, we showed our mettle there to, yes, it was against a newly promoted side, but to have over an hour with 10 men and win 1-0 was an impressive result. But equally, in the first 25 minutes before Fabian Schär's red card, we weren't great, to be honest. We looked a little bit off the pace. Anthony Gordon wasn't quite as sharp as he had been last season. He's obviously come back a little bit late from being at the Euros and hasn't had much pre-season. But yeah, we didn't look great. We weren't really keeping the ball. Southampton, if I'm being honest, with a better side for the first 25, 30 minutes before the red card. So yes, we sort of managed to get an impressive 1-0 win in the circumstances. But before that red card, we didn't look great. So I think Newcastle fans are hoping to see an improved performance on the ball. Obviously, when we have 11 men on Sunday, hoping to see us keep the ball a little bit better, have a bit more control and show a little bit more quality and sharpness there, because there was a bit of signs of rustiness and being a yard or two off the pace. But saying that, with Fabian Schär's red card, he'll be suspended from the game. He won't play. As I said, Sven Botman's already injured, our other first-choice centre-back. And at right-back, there's talk of Trippier leaving, Kieran Trippier. So it'll probably be Livramento at right-back, with the centre-backs being another right-back and Emil Kraft, who can fill in at centre-back, who's probably our sixth-choice centre-back. And then alongside him, Dan Burn, with obviously Fabian Schär and Botman being out. So we're going to be probably quite weak at the back, and that's a bit of a worry. And obviously Sandro Tonali, who's actually coming back from a ban next week, can't play again. So this is actually the last game where Sandro Tonali will miss out, who was the 55 million signing from AC Milan last summer. So it's to be honest, probably quite a good time to play us. Obviously there's improvements to make there on last weekend's performance. And just another thing there to mention, I don't know what people make of this at Bournemouth's end, but the red card for Fabian Schär is obviously going to miss 3 games now. I personally think that was a bit harsh. I mean, in one sense, I think it is silly of Schär to take the bait and put his head in there. He shouldn't have done that. I think you're always going to run the risk if you get involved and put your head anywhere near someone else. But for me, looking at the replays, they've both kind of just, their heads haven't met in a headbutt motion. They've just sort of pressed each other's foreheads on each other, and they've gone sort of head to head rather than actually through a headbutt. So for me, I think if you're being sensible there from VAR, or if you're looking at rules, surely should a rule not be put into place that says if players press heads but don't actually put a sort of headbutt motion into place, and should that not be just a yellow card apiece and then move on, and just rather than sort of dishing out red cards? But anyway, maybe that's a bit of bias, but I just didn't think it was enough to warrant like dangerous play in a 3-game ban. But it is still silly of Schär, and obviously we'll miss him at the weekend because he's our ball playing centre back who can pick a pass, can carry it out of defence. So we're gonna miss that on Sunday when we play you guys. So and yeah, in terms of hopes for the season, I mean, we missed out on Europe last year. We finished 7th. So before that FA Cup final between Man United and Man City, 7th place would have got us Europa Conference League. But because Man United won that final, they got the Europa League spot. And I think Chelsea, it might have been Chelsea, got pushed down in the Europa Conference League, which meant we've missed out on Europe, which is a blow. But I think the big thing for Newcastle this season in terms of our hopes were either, well, there's a couple of things really. We all know how long we've been waiting for a trophy, so that's a massive priority for us to do well in the cups and go that one step further after getting into a final against Man United the season before last. But in terms of our league hopes, I think we, as a minimum, we want to get back in Europe. There's hopes for a Champions League place if we can repeat what we did 2 seasons ago where we finished 4th. But at the minute, Eddie Howe hasn't quite been backed enough with first team upgrades. So I think we're up against it a little bit to break into the top 4 this season, based on, obviously, Man United have spent money, Chelsea have, Tottenham have just signed Solanke for 65 million, who, of course, as you Bournemouth fans will know, that's a really good player they're getting there, and a big loss to Bournemouth. So teams around us are spending. Aston Villa have spent money, West Ham have spent a lot of money and got a new manager there. So there's so much competition around that sort of top 8, top 10. which means getting into the top 4 feels like a really tough task, but that's definitely the aim. Although at the minute, like I say, without a quality centre-back yet with Gahey and without a right winger, which feels like the upgrade we need in the first team, it's probably feeling a little bit ambitious to say top 4, but it's not beyond us. I think if we can combine the season before last defensive record, where we were the second best defence in the Premier League, with last season's goals, where I think only Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool scored more, if we can find that mix and we can end the transfer window well, I think top 4 isn't beyond us. But at the minute, I think a top 6 finish would be the aim, with the hope that we could just sneak into the Champions League. And the final thing, Eddie Howe, I know he was obviously held in such high regard at Bournemouth for what he did there. I know it didn't end well, but yeah, we love Eddie up here. We obviously were worried earlier in the summer that he might have been going to England, but I think, to be honest with you, he quickly shut that down based on the fact that he's still a young manager who enjoys the sort of day-to-day nature of Premier League management too much to leave for international football just yet. So yeah, we were massively relieved to keep Howe, and obviously we're hoping this year that we can kick on. It obviously needs to be backed in the last week of the window, but we're massively relieved to see that England have gone for Lee Carsley on an interim basis and not taken Howe. I think in the future we accept that Howe's probably going to one day might take that England job, but I think at the minute it's just not the right time, even though he would have been tempted. So yeah, we're really grateful to have him. We're just hoping we can sort of make those improvements over the last week of the transfer window to give us that extra chance. But yeah, Howe's really ticked every box really since he's come in. He's improved existing players who were looking like they didn't have much of a future at the club before the takeover. So the likes of Sean Longstaff or Fabian Schär or Joe Linton, who's genuinely gone from a £40 million striker who couldn't hit a barn door to, as Alan Shearer said on Match of the Day last weekend, one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. He's so dominant and he's fit again now, and he's definitely one to watch in terms of our strongest players in our team at the weekend. Him and Bruno Guimaraes in midfield, 2 Brazilians. Obviously Joe Linton's our battering ram and Bruno's our sort of midfield maestro who can also get in the tackle and works hard for the team. So, but yeah, Eddie Howe's improved players. The defence in the year we finished 4th was superb. And that's actually something he was criticised for, I think, at times at Bournemouth. There was sometimes criticism that you conceded too many goals. But like I say, season before last, the defence was brilliant. Last season, we scored goals for fun. It's just about merging those two together this season, hopefully. And he always speaks so well as well, Eddie Howe, in press conferences. He always seems to take difficult questions so well. He's very positive as well. There's some managers who would sometimes go into a game and play down people's chances and put a bit of a negative spin on things. I know former manager Steve Bruce was awful at that, but Eddie Howe always speaks positively, with authority, with respect, and he seems to understand the club really well. So yeah, we love Eddie Howe, and we're obviously hoping that this season can be a repeat of sort of 2 years ago, opposed to last season where we suffered so much with injuries, fatigue, and obviously maybe playing in the Champions League caught up with us a little bit, and we didn't quite have the squad to cope, given the injuries that it came with as well. So yeah, sorry, that's quite a lot from me there, but yeah, that's just some thoughts from a Newcastle point of view. And obviously Bournemouth, just a few thoughts on Bournemouth as well. I think Iraola is someone that looks to be a really talented manager, and I know Craig has said to me in the past that where you've previously maybe not had the players to play the style of play he's wanted to put forward, it does feel like you're sort of building that now. I know you've got Zabani is a really highly rated centre-back who looks like he's going to go on to big things, and Dean Hodgson, apologies if I've butchered the pronunciation of his surname there, but the young centre-back you've brought in from Juventus, he looks like a real talent as well, who'll allow you to be playing out from the back a little bit more. I know Alex Scott, really talented midfielder, and you've got some exciting wingers as well with Semenyo, Sinistera, and obviously the new signing, Evan Nielsen. He's got big shoes to fill with Solanke, but it feels like he's a really good coup for the club, having done well at Porto and been linked with some big moves. So yeah, obviously good luck for the rest of the season. Hopefully we get the better of you on Sunday, so I don't want to give you too much luck for that. But yeah, hope you have a good season after Sunday at least. But yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Cheers.
There we go. Thank you to both Jon and Olly for recording and sending in their thoughts ahead of this game. Let us know what you think will happen against Newcastle. Of course, there's going to be lots of celebrations with regards to our 125-year anniversary of this football club. A football club that has fought so hard against turmoil and struggles in the past. And in fact, we did speak to Andy Stegel. You'll recognise him from TVS, Meridian, Sky Sports, about that as well. So do go and check out our Cherry Picking podcast, episode 52. Andy does go into lots of detail. Now, we do have as well a very special guest who is coming on for the West Ham preview. Keep your eyes peeled. It's going to be released on Sunday at 6 p.m. so after the game. So do make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell button because you'll be the first to find out. Also, do check out all of our previous interviews as well. We've had the likes of Richie Neville from 5, Richard Archer from Hard Fi, Tiff Nadell, of course, of Top Gear fame, Omid Jalili, of course, he's a comedian, and we spoke to so many others as well. To be honest, I could reel them all off, and of course, Harry as well. So until the next one, thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.
The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.